here, but did everybody get one of these? And it's important for the evening here, so just raise your hand if you need one. So also, everyone that we handed one of these to, there's a drawing tonight for a cooler. So if you haven't signed up for that, we'll get you signed up before the night's over, and Ian will be coming through. But we ready, Rayleigh? You think, Ryan? You want to come up and get us started here? Thanks.
Well, folks, Ryan Perry, Western Livestock, thank you all for coming. Very, very informative and important session that we're going to deal with tonight. Nice crowd that we got on hand. I know the good Lord blessed us with some beautiful moisture to the east and maybe hampered a few of those people, but we are broadcast live stream, and once again, thank you all for coming. Make sure to voice your opinion on anything that you'd like to speak about tonight, because this is your meeting as well. So with that, I'd like to introduce Rayleigh Honeycutt with Montana Stock Growers, and she'll get this thing going.
Thank you, Ryan, and thank you to you for opening up your establishment for us and some of the great food that we had earlier tonight. Really appreciate it. As mentioned, I'm Rayleigh Honeycutt. I'm the Executive Vice President of the Montana Stock Growers Association. We really want to extend our thanks to all of you for joining us tonight. This is the 12th out of 13th meeting that we'll be hosting around the state. So our team has definitely been road warriors over the last couple months, and it's really exciting to kind of be in central Montana, my home county, and see many familiar faces. And I think we have a great lineup tonight and a great conversation ahead of us. So before we kind of kick it off, wanted to do some quick housekeeping rules. As mentioned, we are live streaming as well as recording the videos, so that will be posted on the Montana Stock Growers website after tonight. It also gives you the opportunity to go back and maybe hear other listening sessions that we've held across the state if you're interested to see what Miles City or Glendive said. Additionally, I wanted to give an opportunity to any elected officials, candidates, or staff representing congressional offices an opportunity to introduce themselves. So, Brett, I see you're up there. You want to introduce yourself first?
I'm Brett Slaughter, and I'm with Senator Gaines' office. I'm the Natural Resource Liaison, and I'm based here in Great Falls with Governor Lindsay.
All right, Commissioner Downing.
Hi, Troy Downing. Thanks for giving me a second here. I'm the Commissioner of Insurance and Securities for the state of Montana. I also sit on the land board. I know a lot of you folks have reached out to talk to us about some of the issues we're dealing with on the land board right now, specifically that Scudder case and what's going on with water rights. And I want to tell you that we're listening, and we're going to be bringing that up in the next land board meeting, because we want to make sure that we're protecting your rights when you're developing water on private land and using that on state trust land. So if you have something to say about that, please let me know. Come find me before we leave. I'm running for Congress right now for the 2nd District here for a Rosendale seat. I'm really excited about the opportunities. I'm a businessman. I told you I'm sitting in office right now. I'm also a combat veteran. I've gone to war for this country. And I'm just going to tell you, national security is important to me. What's going on at the southern border, we got to deal with that. I really believe that food security is national security. We need to make sure that we're keeping our production, agriculture in production, make sure that we're supporting our farmers and ranchers. Energy security is national security. We need to make sure that we're producing energy in this country and not bringing in from others. But if you have questions about that, I'm going to be here all night, or just come find me. I'm Troy Downing, and thanks for giving me a second to talk to you.
Excellent. Thank you. Former legislator Holden.
Hello, everybody. My name is Rick Holden. I am a former state senator
Thank you. Any other candidates? We also have a senator here, Senator Butch Gillespie. You want to say hello?
Hello, glad everybody's here. I'm Butch Gillespie. I stay at the state level, Senate District 9, one that goes from Sweetgrass at the border, kind of all the way down into the north end of the Helena Valley. So even though it's just a Senate or state office, it does cover a lot of geography. And just one quick thing, Troy Downing mentioned about that Scudder case. I thought we had that thing resolved 3 years ago in the legislature down there, and now it's all blown up again. And that is really, really important. It means that if you put 1 ounce of your water on state land, they're going to claim it as their right, and it's a bunch of BS. But we're still fighting the fight, so that's an important one to stay on top of.
Senator, if I could just add, that's that Redfield bill that came in 2019.
Yeah, House Bill 286.
Yeah, yeah.
Excellent. Any other congressional staff here? I didn't see anyone. All right, great. Well, at this time, I want to introduce the Montana Stock Grower President, John Grandy. He's going to give a quick welcome as well as introduce you to the board members from MSGA that are here.
Great, thank you, Ray Lee. It's wonderful to see all of you here. Most of these I've been to, I have 2 or 3 people to introduce. We got a little bigger crowd tonight, so I won't be able to keep track of everybody. But you've met Ray Lee. We have our policy specialist, Ellie Brighton, on staff over here. We have Ian Kane, who does our membership work over here, and we're certainly happy to have them. From our board, we have our first vice president, Leslie Robinson. Our second vice president, Turk Stovall, you'll be hearing from shortly. We have several directors here. Monty Lesh is over in the corner. Dean Laram's right here. Rocky Forsyth. I think that's it. Did I miss anybody? I guess another thing I'd say quickly is we're going to talk a lot tonight about some of our partnerships and building alliances, and it's very important that we work together with people. So we appreciated all these meetings, having our friends here, like we have Cindy Johnson from the Montana Farm Bureau Federation. Allison's here from the Montana Grain Growers. We really appreciate them being here. So I think with that, I'll just turn it back and thank you, everyone.
Thanks, John. All right, so just to give you a preview of how tonight will run, this truly is a listening session. We want to hear from you. We want to hear your ideas, the challenges that you're facing, solutions that you may have. And so tonight's format will be a quick overview and background of how we got to these listening sessions, and then we'll move into an interactive survey component, and then open it up to the bulk of the evening, which is the listening session. So between Turk and I, we will kind of help moderate the evening. And so I'm going to hand it over to Turk, and Turk's going to give you a background about how we got here and what we've done so far.
Yeah, thank you, Ray Lee. And again, thank you for you all taking the time to really be part of a really bigger cause that's not only that we're learning so much from Montanans and Montanans being involved, but we're starting to see what we've been doing here in the state, over the last 2 or 3 months is really taken a hold even across the country. And it really has been from these listening sessions, and it's been from the feedback from real Montana farmers and ranchers just like yourselves. Again, my name is Turk Stovall. My family ranches south of Billings, Montana. We're a cow-calf stocker operation, and we own a couple feedlots in that area as well. As John said, I'm the second vice president for Montana Stock Growers. And the one thing I wanted to share tonight is really how this all came about and why we are here. And this really started a couple years ago when there was a working group put together by the LMA and Joe Goggins in Billings, Montana, where ranchers came together to talk about some issues that really we felt like weren't necessarily getting addressed, as well as talking about is how do we get this industry to work together? And how do we unite to be able to have one voice when we go to our U.S. senators or our U.S. congressmen and saying, you know what, this is what we really need to make a difference at home and across our country. And there was Montana Stock Growers members in that working group. And they came together and said, hey, how do we create some resolutions to take to our state convention to be able to be proposed that, you know what, we think we can make a difference here. And that's what happened. And there was resolutions put together that were really focused on how do we keep multi-generational ranches together, and how do we create multi-generational ranches. The other is how do we be sustainable and profitable in this business, and what do we need to get that done? And lastly, there was a directive to saying, Montana stock growers, we want you to go out and create some unity in this industry. We want you to reach across and saying, hey, how can we all come together with one voice? How can we say, you know what, there are some issues out there that we know we just doesn't seem like we can see eye to eye on, but how do we put those aside to us, and how can we sit there and say, what can we agree on? And what can we all come together on as an industry, as Montanans, to really go forward to Washington, D.C. or to our state and make a difference that really is a difference to help this state stay Montana, and also to keep us really, one of our biggest strengths of America is us being able to feed ourselves. And the American farmer and the American rancher is vital to national security. And we want to make sure that we continue to help tell that story and really get some policy move forward that's going to ensure that long into the future. And so with that, and this is what happened in that working group, you know, there are some issues out there that it seems like we can't see eye to eye on. And we're just not going to bring those up tonight. We're not saying they're right. We're not saying they're wrong. That is just a discussion for another day, and that's what not tonight's about. Tonight's about what can we agree upon and what is going to make a difference at home. But those topics are country of origin labeling, the beef checkoff, the markets, the fed cattle market, the feeder cattle market. We're just going to say, you know what, we have talked about this for 20 plus years. We're just going to set that aside, and we're not going to talk about that tonight. And so we do appreciate for that format, if everybody could respect that format. We have been across this state, and that has been respected the entire time. And we have had leaders from RCAF. We have had leaders from the U.S. Cattlemen's. We have had leaders from Montana Cattlemen's, Montana Farmers Union, Montana Farm Bureau, where we have really had an opportunity to come together, and it's been an awesome sight. And I'm really excited that you guys are all part of it as well. And so with that said, I'm going to hand it back over to Ray Lee. Just a precursor, start turning to page 2. And our staff has just done a phenomenal job for the formatting of this to really try to get everybody's input and create as many different channels for us to interact. So maybe if you're not comfortable with talking in a microphone, be sure and participate here online, because everything that you do tonight, this is being live streamed. So when you do talk on the microphone, we want you to talk on the microphone, because there is many people listening to us online actively right now, live, and then it's also being recorded. So if after tonight and you want to see what the other sessions are like, you'll be able to do that. What has been really humbling is Montana has been a leader and has shown leadership to where other states are really coming in and saying, hey, you know what, I think we can do that in our state. And just the feedback has been really humbling. And so as you give the feedback online here, you'll see it again. Our team follows up. You'll see what everybody's answers are. The answers get a little small up there. But I just really encourage you, tonight is your night to give feedback, and for not only stock growers' leadership to hear you, but really for this country to hear you. And we really encourage your involvement. If you don't get anything said at night and something pops in, a good idea later, go to mtbeef.org and to Producer Profitability, and our teams put together a form on there to where, you know what, hey, an idea just came up. And so we're trying to share all these ideas. And as Rayleigh said, we're getting ready to wrap this up. We're really organizing everybody's ideas. We're bringing in other professionals and saying, hey, how can we take everybody's else good ideas here and get this put together to really make something that is going to make a big difference. So with that, Rayleigh, I'll turn it over to you, and we'll get going.
All right, so raise your hand if you brought your cell phone tonight. All right, none of you can get out of doing the survey now. I know who you all are. So on the second page, you will see a QR code. If you're not familiar with a QR code, you can open up your phone camera and put it over the QR code, and it will give you a link to a website. Once you have the website pulled up, the highlighted section on your form is your entry code. Type that in, and then you will begin or get access to our first survey. We're going to be doing an interactive survey. We've done this around the states, asked the same questions to every group. So really, it's really informational for us to kind of see regionally what people are thinking, as well as we will be putting it all together for a larger rollout report. So if you need help, Ian, who's over there, will be available to run up to you and help you get your form on your phone. But really hope that each of you will get logged in, and we will give you a few minutes to get logged in, and then we'll move on to the questions. Riley, do you want to hit the question? Yeah. Once you're logged in, you will be you'll see this first question pop up. Don't be shy. If you need help, Ian is ready to take action.
Ian's a lot better at it than I am.
Oh, Ian, right up there.
Just as everybody's kind of getting warmed up here, what's been really fun is seeing these responses from Glendive, Glasgow, Billings, Stevensville, Ramsey, Dillon, in that, everyone has a little bit different take on, how these answers are, but it's going to be fun when we compile it, Rayleigh, and sharing that info.
Yeah, so it looks like some of you jumped right in. So our first question is, when you think about producer profitability, what 3 words come to mind? And you'll see as folks start entering in their answers, it starts populating on the screen. This is what's called a word cloud. So as more of the same response gets submitted, the words get bigger. So you'll start seeing words kind of growing and getting bigger. That means that they've been submitted multiple times. So we'll give you a few minutes to take a look at that and get your answers submitted. We have about 5 questions before we open it up to our larger session, but really take the opportunity to submit, even if you have more than 3 words. We'd love to hear those. I'll read it out because I know these fonts are a little small. Some of the popular ones, sustainability, markets, input, efficiency, profit, costs. All right, I'll give you a few more seconds. Okay, Riley, let's move to the next question. In 20 words or less, share with us the biggest challenges you face in your operations growth and success. We see a lot on land access, capital to buy land. We'll have a whole section later on tonight about that. So if you have specific thoughts or challenges, we would welcome you during that time to grab a microphone and share some of your comments and thoughts. Okay, well, 10 more seconds. All right, Riley. In the last 10 years, what tools or programs have been the most beneficial to your operations profitability? We've heard a lot about government programs, but also some unique opportunities that some local communities have had across the state where they've kind of built coalitions or, local working groups to kind of work on some of the challenges that their local groups have had. We're seeing video sales, ranching for profit school, young farmer and rancher loans, USDA conservation programs, a good lawyer and accountant, awesome CPA. Did you write that yourself, Ryan? We have a CPA in the room. Oh, his dad wrote it. I get it. Good job, Dad. Young farmer and rancher loans, rainfall insurance. Hedging. All right. Next question. What do you believe will be the biggest challenge to the livestock industry in the next 20 years? How fitting taxes is kind of the big one that popped up. That's going to be our first topic that we talk about in just a few minutes. All right, Riley. All right, and this is our last question before we head into the listening session. But we've heard a lot from folks regarding generational transfers or folks wanting to get into the industry. So this really helps us get a sense of where folks are at. Regarding succession planning, share with us which category most relates to you. I'm a beginning producer wanting to transition into the industry. I have a succession plan. I'm in the process of creating a succession plan. I don't have a succession plan. I plan to exit the industry. We get the question a lot. I'm a young producer. That's self-selecting. So if you're young at heart, you can pick that category. All right, as you wrap that up, don't put your cell phones too far away. We have 3 questions at the end of the evening that we will want you to pull those back out for. But at this time, I'm going to hand it over to Turk, and we're going to kind of open up our next phase, which is the listening session part.
Okay, so now we're gonna do is we're just gonna go on this front page here, and we're gonna go down virtually these topics here, and these are topics that the Producer Profitability Task Force came up with, and these aren't a solve-all, but it is for sure a great place to get started in having the discussion. And then what we have found out through these discussions is these categories definitely do take care of many of the concerns and discussions we've talked about. But, you know, by the end of the evening, if there's something we didn't touch on, please bring it forward. So what we're going to do is we're going to go down each one of these categories, and we're just going to kind of take a little bit of a deep dive and just talk about these issues that we've been hearing and get some feedback. And we'll go through there in a fairly organized manner, or maybe not. But and then what we'll do is we're going to have what we would virtually call an open mic. And if there's something we missed there, then we're going to give everybody a chance to give some further feedback after that. So with that said, let's talk about taxes. You know, by far, the largest topic and the elephant in the room is the estate tax. And that has been a very clear point in about every meeting we've gone to is we need to do something about the estate tax. And you can call it the death tax, you can call it the most unfair tax out there, you can call it double taxation because I've already paid taxes on this. You know, we've definitely heard it all. But what are we going to do about it? You know, and how can we come together as an industry and really get some sort of resolutions far into the future that we don't have to worry about that as farmers and ranchers? It might be one of the most biggest threats to multi-generational ranching. So like right now we have different types of exemptions, but they're set to go away. And I'm going to just pick on John, our president. If you wouldn't maybe just highlight a little bit of that, John, on what that means and what are some of the timelines that we're faced with.
Sure. So did y'all get that? We're going to do this in a very organized manner, or maybe not. Quickly, one of the things when I talk about partners we work with and everything, I should have recognized the chairman of the Montana Board of Livestock is with us this evening. So thank you, Gene Curry, for being here. So on taxes, Turk pretty well already hit that on the estate tax. Our policy is for complete elimination because, as he said, you're already taxed on that money when you make it. Your death should not be a taxable event. We just don't think it's a fair tax. Furthermore, it's not even a big moneymaker for the federal government. The federal government doesn't need this money in the sense that it doesn't bring much in. It's basically just all about wealth transfer. So we would like complete elimination. So having said that, but where are we right now? We have tax laws in place now where there is an exemption that's indexed for inflation. So it's grown since that was put in. So today it's give or take 13 million. I don't know, Ryan, if you know exactly what it is, but call it $13 million. So for a married couple, that's $26 million. So you think about the value of your farm and ranch. There's an awful lot of farms and ranches in Montana that are not covered by $26 million. There's quite a few that are. You know, it's a whole lot better than a poke in the eye with a sharp stick. But that tax law goes away at the end of 2025, and that reverts back at that time to the previous level, which is more in the neighborhood of $5 million. Again, that's not exact, but it's close. So this is one of those things where, you know, a lot of times we're in good shape if we can count on Congress to do nothing because that's what they're good at. Last year they passed 34 bills, and that wasn't even an election year like this year. But we can't count on them doing nothing for this. They have to act to pass a new tax law, or we will revert back to that lower exemption. So this is something we need to be working on right now. There are bills introduced in both houses of Congress to do away with the estate tax. Both of those bills right today are probably placeholders that are gonna go absolutely nowhere this year. Congress won't act till sometime next year at the last minute. But there are bills in place, and this is the time to have that conversation and to get the pressure on and to have everybody talking about it. You know, waiting till December of next year is way too late. And as Turk said, it's potentially the biggest barrier we have to generational transfer. One other thing quickly, another thing we've got going on the tax front, there's several things going on in the state with property taxes. The governor has 2 committees or task forces working right now. One of them specifically on property taxes, you know, how does that fit with, you know, a lot of people's residential property taxes went way up last year. How do we deal with the whole property tax situation in general? Another one is specific to the ag land tax classification. You know, how is it defined? I mean, right now, anything where you get a gross revenue of over $1,500 can be considered agricultural land. Well, you can sell 1 calf today, you got it made. So does that definition need to be changed, updated for some of these ranches that, or any kind of land that qualifies currently as an ag land, but really is more recreational? Do we need to change that definition of how that works? So there's a group in place working on that. Montana Stock Growers have our representative, John Lewis, sits on that task force. He's got a lot of good ideas. Both these task forces are gonna have draft legislation coming forward pretty soon. So we'll have a chance to see what they're working on. But we're gonna welcome any input on those issues. So Turk, back to you. Oh. Yeah, thank you, Leslie. Yeah, that is right. Cindy sits on not just one, but both of those task forces. So that's great. Thank you.
So Cindy, are you saying we can give you a microphone, you can give us a further update? Is that it?
So sales taxes are not anything that we have covered in the property tax side, that working group. But there are a lot of issues that are still on the table, like how do we control the expansion or the continued growth of TIF districts and how those impact local taxpayers? And what do we do, if anything, about local option taxes? You know, some communities have them, the resort communities, and we've had those conversations. There's so many ideas out there, good ideas. And the whole purpose of the property tax task force is to try to create an avenue of relief for the huge increase in our property taxes that we all experienced because of the reappraisals last year and how property values just skyrocketed. So there are still a lot of those opportunities to speak to those issues. All of that information and every one of those meetings, including the subcommittees, there's one for local government, one for education, and one for tax fairness or tax equity. Those committee meetings are all on the governor's website. You just go to the governor's property tax task force, and you can tap into any one of those meetings and see what's been said. Everybody's contact information, I think, is available there too. And people are able to sign up to be included on the meeting notices. If you want to participate as a member of the public, you have an opportunity at the end of the meeting to give comments and feedback about what we talk about. Same with the land classification working group, but that working group information is on the Department of Revenue's website, and it is the director's land classification working group. And we do not have subcommittees that meet in addition to the regular committee meetings. So we're meeting once a month. We hope to have some good solid suggestions by the end of June. That's our deadline. Property tax, on the other hand, is the end of August. Same thing goes, though, all of those meetings are available to everybody to go listen to what we've done already and sign up to be included on notifications of future meetings. and be able to participate. And like John said, there are opportunities for us to make some significant changes. Our bottom line with land classification working groups is to encourage production agriculture, regardless of size. If you have a half an acre of garlic and you're working your ass off for that half acre of garlic, that's production agriculture. If you have 15,000 acres of wheat land, that's production agriculture. If you have 115,000 acres of pasture, that's production agriculture, if you can prove that you're actually doing that. So, there's a whole lot of things that we talk about, like how do you prove it? How often do you prove it? What really constitutes agriculture? We've had long conversations about that, but you can listen to all those meetings.
Excellent. Thank you for that feedback, Cindy. And also, thank you for serving on it and being here tonight. Would you have any comments? I mean, we've also had some discussion about the accelerated depreciation, kind of its longevity, and would like to get a little bit of your thoughts there.
Will you also introduce yourself and where you live?
Test. We good? You guys hear me? There we go. I live in Great Falls. I'm a CPA here. I work for a company called Whiffley. Mostly in ranch farming, all type of egg supply chain issues. Deal with them probably, every week. Something comes up these days. If we want to talk strictly about estate taxes first, we can go there. So quick history, guys, of the estate tax right now in our country. It's steadily rose since the 1940s. That's when it was still kind of going up and down, but steadily it's risen every year per individual. So what your taxable estate is basically what you're worth under your ownership. That's the current fair market value every year. Okay, so probably 2001, 2002, it was up to $2 million a person. Then it bumped to 3.5 throughout the 2000s. Then the Obama administration kicked it up to 5 per person, adjusted for inflation. And then in 2018, when Trump took office, not took office, but you know what I mean, it jumped up to 10 million. So that was the major jump that happened, okay? And that adjusted for inflation to where it's at right now, it's 13.6 million per individual. It's gonna be probably around 14.2, 14.3 per individual next year. And then it goes back down to 5 million adjusting for inflation on 1/1 of 26, okay? So what does this mean? It means right now, if you want to do things in terms of moving your estate into somewhere else, transferring it, instead of just, waiting to pass away and then having to deal with it in the rough way, you have time right now to fix that. The problem that has happened, usually it gets pushed and kicked the can down the road, and then it gets either basically stopped in terms of it won't go back down, and it just keeps going up because, election years have a power of just eventually dissolving things, right? What we've heard through many discussions with lawyers, people that have gone to conferences throughout the entire year, they believe that this Congress right now, and you guys have seen this, both sides, it's a struggle, okay? It's a major struggle to get any legislation passed. So if nothing happens, it drops back down to 5 million, okay? So what can be done in the meantime? Estate planning can be done to avoid the tax potentially, okay? There's another couple avenues you can go down there too. How do you move your estate? Technically, you can transfer it to the next generation. You can move it into a trust structure, and that gets that estate out of your taxable estate. It moves it off, okay? You file a gift tax return, tax-free. Okay, anything over the estate value, here's bearing the lead, anything over your estate value, if you don't do anything, it gets taxed at 40%. Okay, one more time, 40%, okay? So that's what we're facing right now. And it's probably gonna go up to 45%. Okay? So what can we do? What can you actually do with land valuation? Because bearing the lead here too, again, it's land. Land ownership is what's pushing these estates up in Montana. Would you all agree? I mean, that's pretty much the main gist. Some operations can get up there pretty far, but the land is what's changing things. And the recreational piece is what's really jacking up these valuations in western Montana, okay? That's become a major problem. Because when land gets valued, it gets valued at highest and best use. And we have certified valuation experts having to do their job, and they see the recreational value as the highest value, okay? That's kicking land from 4,000 productive value per acre up to 10, 12. I've heard 17, okay? Like it's kind of ridiculous, right? So that's all I'm saying is we can battle this and get this down and hopefully get it to stay. But even if it goes down, there's still a lot we can do in the meantime in 2 years, okay? And that would be my call as a CPA. What can we do? Do estate planning. And by the way, estate planning should be done without an estate tax problem anyway. We have to, as an industry, we have to figure out how to get our estates under control, okay? That's my call to that. Bonus depreciation?
Yep.
Okay. Bonus depreciation, you guys have probably heard from your CPA about Section 179 or bonus depreciation. Under the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act from Trump, basically you could take 100% bonus depreciation on qualified assets. Basically, bonus depreciation under Trump kicked back up to 100% instead of 50% of that equipment or whatever you bought. What qualifies under bonus depreciation is 20-year to 3-year assets. Most of what we have is probably equipment, 5 to 7-year assets, but our powerful ones are our shops, corrals, land structures. Those are 15 and 20-year depreciable lives. Those qualify for bonus depreciation, okay? Not Section 179, which is another type of accelerated depreciation, okay? But bonus is all in or all out, okay? So when it goes to 100%, technically, okay, that's 100%. You gotta take 100, and that's it. But there was built-in language in Trump's law that starting in 2023, it phases out to 80%, okay? Then in 24, it goes to 60%. So right now, we're under 60% under current law. There actually is a bill out there right now with Congress, it's at the Senate, that would kick it back up to 100% for 2023 and kick that forward to 2027, I think, for 100%. Well, they haven't passed it yet, so, you know, what are you supposed to do as a CPA? I don't know. You gotta go with what the current law is. So right now, we're under 60%. So we're losing that, but we're going back down to the 2015 level, basically, of 50% is what's happening, okay? We still have Section 179. Section 179 is you can take, let's say you buy a combine for, you know, well, if you're a farmer, $500,000 or whatever they cost now. It's ridiculous. You can take the full amount, basically under 179, or you can take whatever amount you want. You have the power of moving up and down there. With bonus depreciation, you either gotta take whatever the percentage is, or 0%, and just take the regular depreciation of the life. That's it. So right now, with bonus depreciation, we're at 60%. And then we'll be at 40% in 2025, then it's gonna phase out. Bonus depreciation, like the estate law, has slowly moved back up, and they usually always extend it. But now we just don't know. Again, don't do anything right now. That's what it's gonna be. So, that's a lot, guys. Sorry, I started talking tax to get going, and then, you know,
Excellent.
it is what it is.
Any other comments or thoughts in the topic of taxes? Because we can always come back to it as well. Let's talk a little bit about government oh, go ahead.
Can I add just something
Yep.
to that, Dirk?
Yep.
Yeah, just a little addition to the estate tax and the bonus depreciation. When you put it in real layman terms, right now, we've got between the spouses or whoever, between the two, we got a $26.5 million exemption. Doesn't affect a lot of people probably in this room. But you get that thing in 2025 and it drops to $5 million apiece to go to $10 million. In my opinion, I think they're gonna try to get it probably to 3 or a 4, so you get it to a $7 or $8 million total exemption. Guess what? That affects everybody in this room. It affects the young people to be able to move forward. I mean, right now, just in our own family's case, if we wouldn't have this death tax right now, our family'd be $16 million ahead right now. But we got to buy these ranches again, buy these businesses again. And to me, when you say, what can we do? I mean, I think definitely we as individuals have to all work on our own estate planning. But I think we as an industry, to me, that's the whole reason for having these focus group meetings, for going around the state and trying to come up with some things that we as an industry can find some common ground on, and hear from people that basically probably have no allegiance or not very active within any industry group right now, but you're here because this means something. And I think what really hit home to me when this all kind of was born a couple years ago was we had a meeting in California, focus group meeting with just invited people, but there was a big dairy lobby there. And these two guys were from the dairy lobby were very, very, the one was one of the leading dairy lobbyists in the country, and said, you folks in the beef industry have got to do one thing. You can have all these other things. We agree you need to get rid of the death tax. You need to be involved in some of these government programs. You need all these things that you think you need, but you're never going to get it until you unite. You unify as an industry and go back and educate these policymakers. You don't need to educate the people within your industry. You don't need to educate the consumer. You need to go to DC and educate the people that are making policy and convince these people that you deserve some of these perks, that you do make a difference to national security, to the difference of being America or not being America. And then I think when you look across, to me, on the thing I think that the most productive thing that we can get out of all of these meetings is that we can come up with one or two things that we can all agree upon. And I don't care if you're from the NCBA, if you're from the Farm Bureau, the Farmers Union, if you're from the RCAF, if you're from any of these other industry groups, the Montana grain growers, the American sheep industry, whoever it is. But when we go back there, the different groups, and you go into Senator Daines' office, all those different groups have a different number one ask. And we're throwing darts at each other. And by the time they all get done walking in his office, he's so goddamn confused, he doesn't know which way to go. I don't know what these people want. Wouldn't it be something if out of these kind of meetings that we're having right now, if we could all come together and say, we're not asking you as an industry group to have a different number one. I think it's good to keep different people, different groups accountable. But wouldn't it be something if we all got on a one-page deal and said, we've all got the same number two. We've got to take on this death tax. We've got to at least fight for the exemption level to be as high as it is now. If not, if we can't get the exemption, at least if land is used for food production, then at least it has to be a high level or get rid of it. But if we all as an industry and all of our groups went into these offices and had that as our number two, we all brought it up every time we came in there, it makes a difference. And I think that's what hopefully we can get out of some of these meetings. And the death tax is real. It's not going away. And I think if we tell our story, if we all come together, unify, I think we got a chance.
Thank you, Joe. Anybody else? One idea that came out of Glasgow was, with the estate tax, if we can't get it eliminated, what happens if we have a family that wants to give this to the next generation? And so if it was meant to go keep in production and go to the next generation, then they are exempt from that tax with this caveat. Is that land needed to stay in production for at least 10 years? And meaning, sure, next generation, son or daughter, as soon as it's in their name, they can do anything they want to with it. But if they sold it in the next 10 years, they would be subject to some sort of prorated tax relative to that death tax. But the point is we really need to create these systems to keep this land in production and incentivize the next generation to come there. So that's just another idea. And we're gonna share everyone else's ideas, because hopefully that pops a light bulb in somebody's mind and go, hey, I have another idea. And that's what we need to know. And that's what we need to share with our policymakers. Any other thoughts? Can we put you on the microphone? Yep.
There's kind of a problem with that deal, because if you got 4 siblings that you're gonna have to buy out, can you get together for 10 years and keep that valuation, or is something gonna happen? When you got siblings involved, you're gonna have to buy them out too, not just the tax deal. So in 10 years, something can happen where you're gonna have to pay that tax anyway, the way that sounds, correct?
Well, I would love to hear your solutions, and we'll get that written down.
Well, if 2 people out of the 4 wanna run the ranch, you're gonna have to pay the other siblings off. It happens all the time, correct? We have to be sustainable.
Well, and I think if the objective is to try to create a tax climate to keep in production, then we need those type of comments brought forward to try to think through every situation. And so, you know, that would be great to have those recommendations of, hey, this is what needs to happen in that situation.
So if your 10-year deal, if something falls apart, you're gonna end up paying the tax and you're gonna be paying your siblings, correct?
Well, we haven't made the law yet, so I don't know.
So, well, that's just my thoughts on.
Yeah, I
on
don't
your-
know. I
your
mean,
case.
our whole point is just to get those are good thoughts to bring forward. I don't know.
Okay,
You know, we're here to get the answers from you guys. You know, I mean, it's a complex topic, but we need to do something about it. Thank you.
but
Anybody else?
But a good part of this is just having a good estate planning before somebody's dead, and then you're at the last minute, and you got 4 people with knives at each other's throat wanting that piece of dirt. It happens all the time, you know?
Well, proper planning helps.
And another thing, and I appreciate everybody here, you know, there's some major players sitting in this room right now.
Do you think we could get you to talk on that microphone?
Okay, sorry, forgot about that. I'm here, so, but I do appreciate, because there's some major players sitting in this room right now that can make a difference in this. But I mean, proper estate planning is key to success. I don't care if it's agriculture. Me and my wife Cindy have had several businesses throughout our life. We've been married 37 years. We've had 2 big, pretty good sized businesses. But everything comes to an end in that business. When we turned 60 years old, we got rid of our heavy construction business. It was our exit plan. We stayed on task. We had good people helping us, and we were in the game. And you got to be in the game on any business you got, not only agriculture, whatever you're doing. Agriculture, you get too much of a sentimental value that was Grandpa's land there. But all of a sudden, Grandpa paid $6 an acre, and it's worth $1,000 an acre as grass. How do you keep that going? Do you want to pass this down to your kids? But do they want it? Is one of the big questions you got to sit down and ask everybody. We're going through it right now with ours. We got 3 kids. I'm trying to keep everybody out there on the place. We've developed a gravel pit. I'm developing our feedlot business bigger. We got 1,000 acres of irrigation out there. And I mean, we go into the office there and we look at the checkbook, and it gets used up. It's that simple, you know, so. But I think a key to it is proper estate planning, and everybody's got to be in the game. But like Turk and Joe both said there, that we have to go as a united front when you go back to Washington, because it's big. It's big back there. And you just can't go in there, like Joe said, with 7 or 10 different opinions at Daines's or whoever's office you walk into, and they're sitting there, well, which direction do you want me to go here, people? You're my constituents, but what direction do I go? You know, it's tough for them back there dealing with everything else that they deal on a day-to-day basis. But getting everybody united is key if we can do it. It's really key to any business. You gotta be united. And another thing on this taxation, to pass it down, okay, say if, I saw up there that if you're gonna exit the business, say you're 70 years old, you have no kids or nobody that wants it, there should be an exemption in that tax that if you got a young farmer and a rancher that's a neighbor there, that you can pass that on to him and you don't get hit with capital gains, period. And make it work for that business. You know, I know it's agriculture, but it's still a business at the end of the day. This is a business right here at the end of the day. And you gotta show a profitability part of this thing. Because when you go into that banker, you gotta show a good balance sheet, but he's also looking, well, I want that dirt. I gotta have that dirt before I can loan you this money. The pickups and the tractors and all this and the cows, it's value, but he wants that dirt. And that's where it comes down to on this thing. And it takes a lot of money to put all of this stuff together nowadays. It's a changing environment, a big time. It's changed a lot in our lifetimes, and it's gonna change a lot more in the next 10 years. We're facing a lot. With the mess that Washington is in back there, it's appalling that it's turned into this back there. But it's gonna affect every one of us right here in this room. And I'd like to thank everybody that showed up, and I'd like to thank all the politicians and everybody too. Thank you.
Thanks for that.
Something that just happened lately, I don't know if everybody saw this, but the administration that's in power right now would love to kick capital gains up to 40%. So that might tell you what could happen to this estate tax if they're back in there. Just something to heads up.
Yep, thank you for sharing that. Yep, we have Cindy up here. And great, thank you very much for sharing that and great recommendations.
Riley brought up a good subject, and that's the fact that we're all engaged in business. And so once we nail our elevator speech that we're all taking back to Washington, D.C., and we all sound the same, I think that we need to remember that we have a lot of allies in small businesses across the country who are impacted every bit as much by estate taxes as we are who are engaged in agriculture.
Yep, very good point, Cindy. Thank you. Anybody else? We can always come back to this here too. So just let's move on to the government programs. And you know, government programs in the livestock industry can be somewhat of an electrical discussion. You know, there would for sure be some that would say, hey, I absolutely do not want the government involved in the livestock industry at all. Point blank, don't even want to talk about it. Then there's a segment of saying, you know what, hey, there are some tools out there that have been put together for the livestock industry that actually have made a difference for me. And so we really felt government programs for sure needs to be a strong discussion with not only today's livestock producers, but even more importantly, what about tomorrow's livestock producers? And just wanted to bring up some of the programs that are already going on. And are there other programs that don't exist today that maybe we need to be thinking about? Now, FSA has programs to help young farmers and ranchers get going. And we do have some young farmers and ranchers in the audience, and I already told them I'd pick on them. But hey, do they even work? You know, or I know some of the lenders have some young farmer and rancher programs that work with FSA. And do those even work? And we want to talk about that. We also want to talk about a big topic that has came up in every meeting is LRP. And that's livestock risk protection. And that's a subsidized option. And it is a tool for livestock producers to get some level of price security and obviously a volatile marketplace. And it's been a little bit surprising when you say really, I mean, there's many producers don't even know it existed. And so that's been good. And so we do have there's a small explanation of what LRP is in the packet. But I'm just going to pick on Joe real quick. If you could just give just what is LRP and what does it mean? But I also just, with that said, in one of our resolutions that was passed at the annual convention at the Montana Stockholders it was said that, you know what, we like LRP, but there needs to be some tweaks in there. And to make it to where it's just a little more usable. And should the subsidy be maybe reevaluated and to where maybe it should be a little bit more subsidized so it's more competitive? And maybe should that only be for a younger producer? So that was a discussion. The other is if I'm gonna go and buy your guys' calves off the Northern Video in June, I need to be able to put and utilize an LRP the second that I take the risk of those cattle. And so that's just a little bit, Joe, if you don't mind, maybe kind of give some visit about that.
Yeah, the LRP, in my mind, is the exact model for the federal crop insurance for the farmer. It is our federal crop insurance model for livestock producers. In my mind, it is tailor-made for the people that make their living selling grass, make their living with that cow and calf. It's tailor-made. Is it perfect? No. But it's, right now, I think if they'd make two changes, in my mind, to the LRP, instead of having 4 to 5% of the livestock within the United States covered by it, you'd probably see it get closer to the tillable acres in America right now. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I would guess 95% of the tillable acres in the United States right now have some sort of federal crop insurance underneath it. Right now, we have 4% of the cattle. A real good friend of mine owns an auction market in Lanesboro, Minnesota, and told me here just a couple days ago that there wouldn't be near as many yearlings turned out on grass in his trade area, which is in the eastern Minnesota, Wisconsin, Iowa trade area. We wouldn't hardly have a yearling turned out this year if it hadn't been for these LRPs, because it allowed these people easier access to capital. And to me, like I say, they're tailor-made for the people that have sell grass on their own. It doesn't work for our family very well, the way it's written right now. For any of us that forward contract calves, yearlings, buy these cattle out front, summer video. Right now, the way that the LRPs are written is you can't write an LRP on a set of cattle until the day you take physical possession of the cattle. So what they're wanting us to do right now is we're buying these cattle on these summer videos, June, July, August, the historic high on the feeder cattle board, the CME, and they're wanting us to hedge these cattle and put an LRP on them in October, November, right during the fall run, a historic low. So really, we need to come together as an industry. I think it's really doable if we'd all get on the same wavelength and go in there and say, the day you should be able to lay off an LRP on a set of cattle is the day you assume price risk, the day you buy them, the day you put a down payment on them, the day you sell them. You terminate that contract the day you sell them. You should be able to lay it off on those cattle the day you buy them, the day you assume price risk. I think if you do that, instead of 4% of these cattle being tied up, you'd say a way, way higher percent, because they don't fit a lot of us that handle a lot of cattle out front. The other thing is, when you look at being able to compete with everybody within agriculture, not just livestock, but the farming community, everybody. When we're all in there competing for that same amount of capital, we're competing, going down the road, trying to compete for land, whether to raise roughage or whether to raise fiber. And right now, the federal crop insurance is subsidized to the tune of about 65%. These LRPs are subsidized to the tune of about 25, maybe 40%. So if we could get on a closer, more fair playing field with the crop insurance and get these LRPs to where they're subsidized at that 50 to 60% level, then instead of costing $80 to cover a yearling a head, you'd probably get it down to 40, 50. Instead of costing 50, 60 bucks to do a 5.5, 6 weight steer calf, you could probably get it back down to $25, $30, way more palatable. Then you get lots more cattle covered. And to me, one of the big reasons for having these meetings, trying to find common ground, and I'm talking to you from a stockyards owner, from a guy that owns several of these, and I sit on a board with people that have a lot of these auction markets. I'm telling you folks right now, the number one concern of any auction market owner in America right now, any video market owner in America right now, I don't care if they live in Virginia, if they live in Iowa, if they live in Montana, or if they live in California. It doesn't matter where they live. Their number one concern is we continue to lose producers. We continue to have dispersions. We continue to sell cow herds. We continue to sell flocks of sheep. We continue to see land being lost and taken out of livestock and food production. And that's my concern here today. That's why our family and our organization has so heavily got behind something like this, because this is big for not only businesses like this along Main Street America, but it's big for rural America. And somehow, in my mind, we've got to come up with ways that allow these people to go in the livestock business to have equal access to capital and have the same equal access to land. Why is it a young person can go into that bank and they'll say, I want to buy or lease half section of ground, and I want to buy a green tractor, and I'm going to raise some corn. And it's not too hard to get a loan. You that same young guy, walk into that same loan officer, says, I want to buy a couple belly loads of bread heifers. I want to lease or buy this ground over here. And it's near impossible. And it's because they don't have a base. This LRP, I'm not saying it's a fix-all. I'm not saying it's the perfect thing, but it does allow not just young people, but anybody to go in that bank and have a lot easier access to capital. I know Monty's sitting here, he used to run a bunch of banks in eastern Montana, and he'd have a way better insight on what this thing does. But the one thing these LRPs do in my mind, especially if we get them just changed to the two things I just mentioned, they allow people easier access to capital, and they allow them a lot easier access to land to grow roughage.
You know, just to share, if, do we have someone wanting? No. Oh. But if it's something you're not familiar with, I really encourage you to get familiar with it and just see if it's a tool that fits. The other thing that we just didn't mention, like this is, and I don't know how familiar everybody is just with hedging or options, but you get an LRP policy, you have no margin calls. And that's a big benefit. The other thing is you don't pay for it until the end. It's another big benefit. And the other thing is, I want to make sure everyone hears me loud and clear, you can actually put an LRP on unborn animals. And so let's just put this in perspective. We are in historical prices right now. And just keep that in mind. And we truly want the best for all Montana producers, and it sure seems to be a pretty effective tool that many people have used. Yep.
Joe, can I just ask you a question? You're talking about the difference between the subsidization. Sorry, you mentioned the difference or the disparity on the subsidization in, crop insurance versus these LRPs. Who's discussing that? Is that something that's out there? Are they talking about, trying to adjust that? I mean, that seems like a patently unfair issue right there.
I'll be honest, I don't think there was a lot of conversation about it until these groups, what the Montana stock growers with these auction markets around the state of Montana, by coming together and putting these meetings on, it's nothing short of historic, Troy. And to answer your question, I don't think there was hardly anybody, if anybody, talking about that until you get groups of people that it matters. And they're starting to talk about it now. When you look, I mean, I'm sure online right now, I'm sure there's contingencies from many different state organizations right now watching this. All eyes are upon the state of Montana right now. And I'm so proud to say that that Montana, the Montana stock growers, the producers of Montana are taking the lead. And what a better place. Not a better place in the world to have this thing start. But you're going to see, they're going to have big meetings in Alabama. They're going to have big meetings in Minnesota, Wisconsin, Iowa. I think we're going to get Wyoming, the Dakotas. You're going to see this thing snowball into meetings just like this to where we can find some common ground on a few ideas. And one of these ideas is just that. Can you imagine what will happen if every trade organization goes into these offices and says, hey, we got to change this LRP. It's a big thing. It's a big thing for these producers, whether they make it or they don't make it. It's a big thing for rural America. And if we go in there with one or two of them, I don't think we can go, I know they've got hundreds of different ideas they come up with, but we got to come down to one or two and go back there, because this industry, folks, for the last 70 years has been doing the same thing. We've been trying to sue the packer. We've been trying to do all these different things, but it seems like it's the same thing over and over and over. And we have been forced as an industry to play defense. There's not an industry in the United States of America that is better at playing defense than those of us in production agriculture. We've been forced to. And they all say to win these championships, you got to play defense. All I know, to win a championship, every once in a while, you got to put the ball in the hole. And this industry hasn't had a win for a long time. If we come together on a few of these things, we take on this death tax, tell them the importance and convince these people the importance of it. We go back there and we convince these people that the importance of changing these LRPs to where they more fit our people within livestock production, to make them more competitive when they go into that bank, to make them have the same competition and more competitive when they go up the road and try to lease or buy that land to grow roughage. If we can get just one or two things like that, and we prove to not only our industry, but to these policymakers that we can unify around something and look at what happens, then you start attacking some of these other things. But we've got to figure out one or two things, in my mind, my own personal opinion, but we better come up with one or two things that we can find some common ground on and get a win, because this industry needs one.
Thank you. Anyone else just in LRP? And yep, right over here.
I need an expert. I need some expert. I've never played the LRPs.
Yeah, it's on.
Is it on? Okay. I've never done the LRPs, but I've done the options and the regular commodities before. But what I saw last fall, when everybody started getting out of the LRPs were coming due, it kind of drove the live cattle market down. Am I right? Did it last fall? Because there was a dip there in December.
Well, I think they've proven that it was probably a contributor, but there was a lot of other things too. And I wouldn't blame that all on it. To me, I think the one thing we haven't mentioned about the LRP that is why, in my mind, it's so tailor-made for folks, these ranches, these families, that number one, risk management scares us all to death. Number two, we're not going to go to the CME and deal with them people in Chicago and come up with these $200,000, $300,000, $400,000, $1 million margin calls. One thing about the LRP, you lock in a base price, and you don't it doesn't lock in, it doesn't put a ceiling on the cattle. If they go higher, so be it. That's great. You're just going to be out whatever your premium was, and there's no margin calls. Now, I don't know how many of you people have made margin calls, but I've laid in bed a time or two trying to figure out how I'm going to come up with $2 million and explain this to my mother. And it's, these margin calls start dipping into your line of credit, your operating. Pretty soon, hey, how am I gonna pay the help? How am I gonna cover these feed bills? Because I gotta pay them Jewish guys in Chicago all this money. And there's a real beauty to some of this LRP deal. There's no margin calls. You can lock a 850-pound yearling spayed heifer up right now today at just under $2,200 for an August delivery. Guess what? She probably makes pretty good money right there. And if she goes to 2,400, that's great. You're going to be out the premium. If this thing drops down to 1,700, guess what? You made a pretty good business decision. And you can sleep every night when all of these goofy things in the world are going on. And that to me, is it for everybody? No, but it's an awful good tool to look at, especially if you.
I got a question for you, Joe, on that. Okay, so, for example, if you have 100 calves, you go into the Farm Service Agency, you want to fill this out and do this program. Do you have to commit to all 100 of your calves, or can you do a lesser amount? And then what happens if what if they go belly up on you? What is the producer in trouble for if you can't deliver? Say you contract 100, but you don't bring in 100?
Well, you got to make sure you cover it. I mean, that's the one thing as a producer. But if you're a producer and you a young, shoot, I know some kids within 4-H that'll go out and buy in a project deal and have 8 head, and they'll put an LRP on 8 head of them. Mm-hmm. They'll put an 8. Right now, I mean, we've turned out thousands of these yearlings. Probably got half of them right now that are covered with LRPs. And the key to the LRP is to put your termination date, not the day that you're going to deliver them, but the day you're going to sell them. If you're going to deliver them in November, but you're going to sell them on a July video, then you put them in July. And you can do from 1 head up to 100% of them. And I'd say 2, 3, 4, 5 years ago, a lot of these bankers didn't understand it. But I would say 100% of the bankers that are ag bankers understand it 100%.
Okay, well, I think we're gonna probably have to start looking at that more seriously. I'm talking about the LRP program.
And we can come back to, yeah. go
Yeah,
ahead.
Dirk, it's Brian Ratsberg. Just to elaborate with what Joe said, I'm a smaller size, but it's a pretty important tool to us right now. I mean, we're at this high, and we can protect that thing for a year or two out. That's a big deal. And like what he was talking about, buying on the video, you know, what we have, like a $20 drop from the video till we took delivery, that's a big deal. And I think that would hold that market steadier longer, clear into the fall if it was protected then. Just my thought.
I've done this, and it worked well last year, and I don't know why it did. The main thing about this, smaller producers can just do any number. It's not a 50,000-pound contract. That's very important. In my case, I think as a cow-calf guy, I usually contract cattle in August for delivery in October. You kind of want to get out past October if you can with your final deal, because that's when it seems to bottom out, and that's when it'll really pay. That's what happened last year anyway. Just my thoughts.
Okay, we're gonna, if we can always come back to LRP, but one thing I wanted to get to is some of our younger farmers and ranchers here tonight, and just talk about some of these programs. If it's FSA, you know, one of the categories down the sheet here is we talk about the barriers to entry, and so if you were a plumber and you woke up the next day and said, you know, I want to be a rancher, I mean, is that even possible? And, you know, can you get the access to the land? Can you get access to the credit, capital? But the bottom line is, and we've talked about it a little bit tonight, is there is more producers going out of our business than coming in. And so we need to figure out how to reduce these barriers of entry to it. We always, because we're already in the business, probably everybody in this room, and we're always trying to encourage this next generation. But the bottom line is just even if our sons and daughters have the best opportunity in the world, that does not mean they're coming home. And we've heard that many times. You know, they just don't want to do that anymore. So the facts is we're going to have to work with maybe somebody that didn't grow up in it. And is that even possible? And so, you know, right now I don't think there'll be anybody in here that say it is possible, because I don't even know if it's possible. You know, it just takes a lot of money. And so, you know, there are programs out there. And so, you know, are they working? Are they good enough? And do you think I can encourage any of you guys to just talk about any of the programs you've been involved in, or what do you need? You know, what do we need to help you get bigger? Or what do you need to do more in this world in the name of production ag?
Hi, everybody. I'm Ben Johnson from Shodo. A lot of things that I can talk about here. My wife and I are a story of 2 failed succession plannings. So I'm no longer on the family place, and we came back and leased what was left of my wife's. And so we started we're a multi-generation operation that didn't return back to a family operation. So some things that really helped us were the people that invested in us, our landlords, people that we could look up to for solid advice. So some things that I would like to see is a network or advisory group to help people coming into the industry. So like who to look out for a lawyer to help you write up a contract or leases or contract for deeds, this and that, and find the right tax person, because not everybody's the same. Figuring out how to write them contracts that's advantageous for both the seller and the buyer, and get you in contact with the right people within the industry to help these young people coming in. PRF was also, should be on this list of a program. When you reach out to your LRP guy, most of them sell PRF. Look into it, have them dive in, have them look at your place. That could be a whole nother income stream for every operation here. If you aren't looking into PRF, you really should. It doesn't work on every place, but a lot of places it does. And on the government financing programs, like we obviously looked at FSA for this and that, but it's so cumbersome and it ties these young people's hands. Like I used to be selling feed, and I had 2 different guys that got upside down on some government financing programs, and it tied their hands so bad on selling cattle that they got strung out for years of not being able to pay their operating bills, this and that. And that scared me. Like, I don't even want to go into a government program financing deal if like that's the case. There's plenty of banks that are willing to work with these young guys, but the issue is that there's just so much capital that goes into this operation, and the return on it, like if you don't have a sharp pencil, like you're going to be out in a year, because it's just so, like me and a banker were talking, 30 years ago or 20 years ago, you could put your head down, get a side job, or put your head down and work through things. I have to sit down and think through. I have to have a 5-year projection, or else like not having a land base to fall back on or renew or to turn over operating on, like I have to make money every year or else it's not gonna work. So like I have to be projected out 3 to 5 years on a growth plan, and you got to learn to say no to some leases just because they're available, because they're overpriced. But really what I'm trying to say is we should figure out how to get a network or advisory group together for young producers to get get these young people in front of the right people. And and that could be multifaceted, lawyers, land transitions, taxes, nutrition, cattle marketing. I mean, you could have you could have somebody on every segment and say, okay, I have a question on cattle marketing. This is the guy that I call. I have a question on taxes. This is the guy I call. Well, anyways, I can go on, but that's my thoughts on how we can help out these young guys.
Just your quick, have you used the FSA programs at all, or?
I just base acres and CFAP money and stuff like that. But I don't lend in, or I don't borrow any money from FSA.
Okay. Did you ever look at it?
I did,
And obviously chose not to, and why?
because the other banks were so much easier to work with.
Any comment on the values that are available? Are they big enough? Should they be twice as much, or?
Oh, I can't really comment on that.
If you're gonna get an operation enough to support a family and yourself, make a business out of it. If you're gonna get an operation big enough to support a family, pay your bills, and have the potential to grow, the opportunities that they offer you don't even come close. You look at interest now, and I realize they have lower interest, but the values that they're offering you don't even come close. Look at the land values that we're all dealing with. I mean, you're gonna be lucky to buy a half section, and then you're still paying on it, and you're still trying to figure out how to pay bills. Not even close. They gotta make that bigger.
Any recommendations of what big
I
is?
mean, you're gonna push 2 mil. If you look at what it's gonna take to pay bills for a single operation, raise a family on, you gotta buy some acres.
Yep.
And the value of land is just doing nothing but going up. If you don't have it, I mean, leases are going through the roof. You know, you still gotta pay that.
Yep.
No matter what you're stocking it with, you still gotta pay it. So that needs to be expanded. The interest rates are considerably lower versus going to the bank. I mean, what are we at right now? 8, 9% going through the bank? You know, so the government programs do have lower interest and a longer term, but still, if you don't have it up front, you can't go get it. You can't go get that land to make that improvement on, to grow.
Any comments of the process or the paperwork? or
Oh,
the
it's
timing?
cumbersome. You're working with the government. It's cumbersome. It's gonna take a while. And you're gonna get frustrated and you're gonna bang your head off the wall. I mean, and they're gonna own you at the end of it too. We've never done it. We've looked into it, but it's too much.
Yep.
You know, they're gonna dictate what you can and can't do, and every operation's different. And we have to adapt and evolve as everything does, environment, markets, everything.
Yep.
And they hold you to a bandsaw.
What do you need? If you could just say, hey, this is what I need help with, and this is how, this would be a solution for me.
Win the lottery. No, I think that, you know, I look at it as some of the biggest hurdles are if you're trying to expand and you're trying to get started, it's getting a foothold. It's getting a hold of something that gives you the opportunity to grow and improve. So to be able to even get the foothold, and without help from family or other producers that are willing to give you a start, it is pert near impossible to get going. To get that foothold, to lease a small place, to buy a small place, and then lease a different place. If you don't have somebody that's willing to work with you, you're not gonna get it done.
Yep.
Unfortunately. So I think that's, to the networking, I think is a big deal, and having opportunities
from people that are willing to put it out there, but that takes generations to do. You know, I mean, it's everything, everybody in here is probably multi-generational. How did we get that way? The generation before us gave an opportunity to do it, and that's what it takes.
Excellent. Thanks for your feedback.
My name is Rose Melisani. I'm the Cascade County Extension Agent. I've been here for 12 years. And to kind of go back, and also ranch, cow-calf. One big thing that looking at people coming into Montana is that I've gone out in my community and seen a lot of people who've come from larger areas. Those kids who maybe they didn't want to be part of the ranch. They went to California, COVID happened, and now they're back on the ranch. That also opens a bunch of different conversation of who wants to be on that ranch, who wants to take on that legacy of your past generations. Other FSA programs, some of those cropping insurance ones, they're based on soybeans, corn, cereal grains. A lot of cattle producers, sheep producers are also raising hay, alfalfa, sandfoin. So those crops aren't underneath those programs. So that would be a nice thing to have underneath those programs as well, are those forages that we use to feed our animals in Montana. But I can tell you a lot of people since COVID, you know, they might have been an engineer. My brother's an engineer in Southern California, and he's talking about coming back home to the ranch. So that brings a different conversation. And then you have the young producers who are in their 40s, like me, who they've had to have those conversations with their father, with their grandparents, to talk about success planning, estate trusts. Those are huge things too. It's been nice to work for Extension because there's a lot of those availabilities. There's a lot of those resources for estate planning. So those are some things that I see from my standpoint.
Excellent. Right over here. And then just real quick, just to comment on that, Rose, we have had some discussions on, and Joe brought it up, you know, there's a, you know, base acres relative to tillable land. You know, should there be some sort of base acres to grazing lands? And that's, you know, any thoughts on that? That would always be good to recommend. So go ahead.
I'm thinking of Joe's dad. I used to sit and listen to him do sales, and when it kind of got to a kind of a down, he had something that was funny. An old boy up at Valere told me, he said, what they need to do is legalize polygamy, because you need at least 3 wives working off the ranch. Right?
I can't hardly handle one.
Well, thank you for that input. Anything for, what do you guys need? If we could say, hey, what do you need to help you where you're at today, or do you have any thoughts there? Yeah, we already had a recommendation in the lottery ticket.
To go back to what Rose was talking about with estate planning, that's a huge deal. We're talking about inheritance tax, we're talking about death tax. I mean, it's all the same. There's too many farms, ranches, businesses, it doesn't matter, where everybody kicks the can down the road and nobody faces the music, because it's coming and it needs to be done yesterday. Everybody needs to sit down at the table and they need to have the hard conversations, and it's nothing any of us want to do. But if it's for the success of the operation and for everyone involved, those conversations need to happen. And those resources are available. I wish they were more available for people to look at. There's a lot of options, but you have to do that. Otherwise, it's gone. We're talking about the tax going down. Operations will disappear. You can't afford it. You need to have those conversations, and people need to be on the same page, and do it before it's too late.
Hopefully everybody heard that one loud and clear. Good job.
I just wanted to add to your question, I guess, on the FSA programs. My personal experience, we went to them, didn't work out. A neighbor had a farm for sale, wanted us to buy it. We just went to talk to him about it. Went to FSA and they told us, so I guess backstory, my great aunt left my brother and I a small chunk of land, which is very helpful and beneficial. But when the FSA looked at it, they said, well, you're already larger than the 60% of the average county size, which, well, there's 120s, 40s. And they said, you're no longer a young farmer. So we were kicked out for, having a small parcel already. And then also, the ground was gifted to me when I was 12. So by the time I was 22, I was already no longer a young farmer as well. And then, so never went back to the bank, got the money from the bank, and basically we're paying twice as much a year than we could have by paying a 5% over, which at that time was, I think, 1 3/4 or something. So yeah, so basically when we moved back, my dad said, I don't need, he was there to help us with equipment and everything, but, wanted us to do it on our own. And so we had avenues, and then, but basically the FSA was really no help. And looking back, everyone I've talked to has said it's a good thing, that basically the paperwork and it's not worth it. And then back to that gentleman's earlier, there is, we've had some leases in the family for 20, 25, 30 years. The older generation got along great with my dad, even us. They pass along and their kids are out of state, and now they just don't care who gets it at all. So I think there could be, initiative or incentives to work with, the production agriculture to sell it instead of just going for the most money.
Yeah. Great recommendation.
FSA's got deals, so if you trust your wife, take her in there because they are disadvantaged and the minority, and you are gonna qualify for a lot more programs if she's the one running the show. And it's worth it.
I don't have a wife that said that she's disadvantaged.
Take advantage of it while you can.
Oh, Ian.
Anybody else?
And I think on that, the last I checked, it was like $600,000 you could borrow. It's just, like someone said with land prices, it's not.
This is kind of a plug for young producers, but if you're not aware, there's what's called a Next Generation Conference, and it's held in Shelby. FSA puts it on, but it's free to anyone as long as they pay like their $50, but you get 36 workshops to choose from. And they go through estate planning, they have like lawyers that come help you show you how to do leases, draw up contracts, they go through livestock, grain, just a multitude of things. But anybody that's young, they are really missing out if they don't do it. It's a one-day conference, and you'll get your money back over time and time again. So you might talk about that. They usually advertise it pretty heavily, but like I said, you don't have to be a FSA borrower, but they have like professionals from Bozeman Extension Office, animal science people, livestock, grazing. So that's a plug for it, especially if you're young and you're trying to find your way. It's a really good program to try to get into.
Thank you.
You don't have to be young, we go every year.
How about you guys? Can I talk you into getting the mic yet? Ready? No? Eli?
Well, just a reminder, if you don't want to talk here, we do have a form on our website that you can submit ideas and thoughts as well. So don't forget that that's an option.
So obviously we talked a lot about the programs, and if there's any recommendation on if, hey, the programs work or don't work, or hey, there's a program I think we need to create, that's what we're looking for. So I'm just going to, Yep.
We help sponsor the Montana Next Gen project, but I've talked to all of our staff at the state level, and I've mentioned it, I think to the grain growers and a couple of stock growers members also. But when we have all of our workshops in every annual or semi-annual meeting that we have, we should make every effort to work with FSA to get those workshops qualified for all of these producers who have to have continuing credits and they can bank them and use them for their loan requirements. And I just think that would be something that we could do for them, because we've all got young members, young producer members.
So in terms of
And your
young
name,
guys.
your name, please. Your name.
Oh, yeah, Matt Nisley. I live in Power, not too far away. So in terms of young guys getting started, one thing that I ran into is landowners that own a bunch of land, they have an option of putting it into a CRP program. So it's pretty attractive. They get a guaranteed check versus renting it to somebody that may have a hard time paying or something. So the government programs seem like a double-edged sword to me sometimes, because I'm competing with the government to, pay for this lease or whatever. So maybe an idea, and I don't know what it'd take to do it, but if those guys that have land that they want to put in CRP, what if there'd be like a circle program where they could say, hey, how about renting it out to a young farmer or rancher instead, and have some kind of a safety net for them? I don't even know what that'd look like, but be an idea maybe.
Yeah, that's great. Actually, one of our resolutions specifically speaks towards making CRP more available to ranchers. So that would
I
align
didn't
very
know that,
much with
so
the
yeah.
resolution.
But I just
Great
noticed
idea.
that it seems like we're competing against, against the government, so these government programs in a way are kind of hurting the next generation,
Yep.
in my view.
Yep. Thank you, Matt. Anyone else? You don't have to be young. So technically, the average age of a young producer is 47.
Well, I passed that.
You passed.
I still think I'm 35. I'd like to say one thing about the FSA. I farm and ranch, and 35 years ago, we went in the ranch and a little bigger. Back then, there was nothing. Now, if you go in and talk to these FSA agents, there are a lot of programs there that help you. A few more guarantees in the past 5 to 6 years, in my opinion. Or, I've been up in there with like a 7-year perpetual drought, and that has saved my butt by going in and talking to that FSA agent. They got numerous, it's basically insurance to take care of you. If you can, I'm not saying that I'm a government, feeding off the government, but they do help you. And you just got to communicate with them, and you got to have a good agent there too. So I just wanted to add that.
Yep. Thank you.
Turk, one of the things, Brian, you're not 35, by the way. There's a couple programs that we haven't talked about. CRP Grasslands, that one just kind of came out, and that's a pretty good program. You can get yourself anywhere from $10 to $15 an acre. You can also graze. It's a lot of the stocking rates you put to the grass and stuff. But most of these FSA programs, if you don't have a good person in the office, it's not good for your county. We're pretty lucky up in Toole County right now. We got a gal that really, she's taking care of people with cattle. And I know Brian can attest to me, a difference like that. Probably another problem is the definition of young farmer is pretty bad. You try to give your kids, a little break, you get them going there, and all of a sudden they got too much, they don't qualify. But I think the FSA programs, they're out there, they got to be utilized, but they're only as good as the person talking about them.
Yeah, just real quick on the mentorship. When I've just been sitting here thinking the different mentors that I can think of that have been great mentors to people within this industry, have given a lot back to this industry. I can think of one man that has a ranch just out of town here at Cascade, Tom Lane, would have probably helped more young producers in the state of Montana than any one person that I can think of. And he'd loan them $500,000. He might loan them $1 million, and just because he wanted to. and he trusted them. But wouldn't it be something, there's a lot of people, when I think of sitting in these auctions, whether it be in Great Falls or Billings or anywhere else, and you see the amount of dispersions that we're having right now in the last 3, 4, 5 years. And most of them are people that are couples that are in their mid-70s to mid-80s, 90, and they have nobody to give this thing to. And they see a pretty good exit spot. And wouldn't it be something if we could come up with some kind of a policy, something that would incentivize these people into mentoring? Maybe a young kid that's helped them for 30 years and would love to take the place on, but just doesn't have the wherewithal to do it. But there's some people, there's people all over this industry that have some wherewithal that would love to leave these things to people, but there's really no incentive to do it. And to me, that's mentorship.
Just any other quick ones on government programs? Yep. We like you on the mic.
Thank you. Now, all you young people, me and my wife were young once too. We were in the 20s and 30 and starting out. But you got to take an attitude that it's your business. Don't go in there to the bank and say, well, I could have hoped, could have, would have, should have this. Don't do that. Go in there and say, this is going to work because I'm going to make it work this way. I mean, have a positive attitude, because I've sat in front of how many bankers? I've fired bankers because I've gotten mad and said, you're not my fit, buddy. I'm out the door. Give me my stuff back. And I walked out the door, and I had a job coming in on one of our business. I needed a lot of money in 2 weeks. And Sydney says, what the hell did you just do? And I said, we did it for our business, not for that banker. And you got to remember that. Everybody, it's your business. I don't care. Starting out's tough. There's no way around it nowadays, because it takes $1 million goes so fast you don't even know it was even there. But you got to have the right attitude going into your business, period. It's that simple.
Thank you. Any other quick ones? Yep.
Boo Boo Bird from Cutbank. I'm in the office, FSA, and doing some of the programs in there. I'm working on a cover crop, and I think the biggest thing in my office that I can say is, it's like any business, you're only as good as your help, and they're turning over at the FSA at my branch here. It's so hard. I'm working on a 3-year cover crop program and got a new guy in there, and I said, man, I feel like a step kid, or a foster kid, They didn't know anything about it. So, we got to look into it, paperwork, So just people in these new programs, they don't know them, and it's just so hard to get things kind of rolling, and then seed should be in the ground, and so,
Yep.
And the paperwork is, they kill a few trees with their paper.
Great. Just to share kind of on that, is in one of, actually many of the programs, there was just at least on the financial part of FSA is maybe it would work better if the loans actually went through a loan officer at a bank, and that could help a lot of just the slowness. It for sure would help the knowledgeableness, and then maybe maybe the administrative part of FSA could be maybe reevaluated, and so that was we thought that was a pretty good recommendation too. We're just going to switch gears, and we're going to talk about labor, and for sure a topic that I know everyone in this room will probably talk about at some point, if not almost every day in an operation. The one thing as we talk with so many different people, the one thing that's I believe is different with the livestock industry is we can get GPS tractors, and it seems like you can probably talk someone into getting in their air-conditioned $600,000 tractor with a refrigerator in it and has GPS. But to have someone go and get horseback every day and go check the calves and make sure the water tanks are unfroze when it's 30 below, and we're not only going to do that today, but we're going to do that tomorrow, and we're going to do it on Sunday, and we're going to do it whenever you have to. And it just seems like that person is hard to find, and maybe some of you guys might even tell me that person does not exist. Because it's either going to be you as the owner operator, or it's going to be your kid. And, you know, everyone has had struggles trying to find that person willing to help you out. And then if you do hire someone, that they actually might be smarter than you, and next thing you know, they're trying to run your place. So there's a lot to discuss here. And so what is the answer? I don't know if we know. But the one thing that has just come up over and over again are these H-2A programs, the TN Vista program. And, you know, those programs were originally put together for your row croppers, you know, to get to harvest the crops and get them to the market. Are they applicable to the livestock world? I think we are starting to try to make that happen more and more all of the time. And if any of you have ever worked with the H-2A program, it really comes down to a job description. And then the U.S. Department of Labor has to approve that job description. And you also cannot have this worker more than 10 months out of the year, because the point of the H-2A program is for seasonal work. And virtually, so if you go through the process, you have to show that you cannot get an American hired. And there is a whole process in this. And so wanted to bring that topic up to see if there's anything that needs to be looked at there that could be a better option for your operations. And should the H-2A program see some improvement as well? You know, my family, we have 11 South Africans and 4 TN Visa Mexicans. So our TN Visa Mexicans are actually veterinarians from Mexico. So they don't, that veterinary degree doesn't mean anything here in the United States, but I will have to tell you, they know that animal is not supposed to die. And they're pretty good at what they do. And we're where we're at today because we had no choice. I mean, that is the bluntness of it. And I can't tell you every operation we get to talking about the H-2A or the TN program. No one went there because that's really what they wanted to do. It was either you needed to get smaller or get out. You sure the heck aren't going to expand. And like just when we were in Stevensville, there was a gentleman there who says, if I lose my H-2A, guys, I'm done. I'm selling out. Not even going to try it. So it's definitely a topic that we're bringing up, not only to help make awareness to Montana producers, but also get some feedback on, hey, how do we make these programs better for you? Troy?
You know, just a couple of thoughts about that. I mean, one of the problems, not just in agriculture, just in the country right now, is just finding workers. And when you're struggling with those issues of those H-2A visas of getting workers, because you, like you said, maybe that worker doesn't exist. I mean, that's happened. H-2B visas, they're all over the place of just trying to get people to come here and do it. And I understand the need of finding people to do the job. Otherwise, like you said, you either need to stop or get smaller. But one of the things is that those programs, you know, grow. What I'm worried about is you start to see that workforce change like that. Who's investing in the community? Who's coming back? How do you deal with that? I mean, is that like the beginning of the end? You know, not to say that you have any choices, but is anybody thinking about how, you know, that is going to start changing the landscape and really start to see, you know, our rural farming agricultural communities start to shrink because there's people coming out for 10 months, you know, taking the money away and not investing in spending their money in the communities, not doing stuff in there. So I don't have an answer. I'm just curious, you know, what people are thinking about that and where that path goes, because as you started out, you know, maybe those workers just don't exist here. So,
you know, I think where we're in Lewistown, that discussion back and forth came up, and it was, you know, there was communities that were really making an extra effort, and we'll talk about them here in a little bit, but just trying to bring in young families. You know, that would be the goal, and this is the demographic, if you will, we're trying to attract into our community. And then you would have another perspective of someone might say, just like in Stevensville, if I do not have this option, you're losing me. And so it is, there is no answer. But the one thing we do know is we have to keep the businesses going. Otherwise, it is really going to go backwards.
So Turk, I work with the potato guys quite a bit on this issue and the sheep guys, Lane Nordland, and I'm Lane Nordland. Hi, Turk. Nice to meet you. And so right before COVID hit, the House in DC was going to pass the Farm Workforce Modernization Act that was sponsored by Dan Newhouse. He's a farmer in Washington, and then Zoe Lofgren out of California. So two different agriculture sectors, but that was going to modernize it. And then COVID happened, and they never voted on it. But then they've tied in the immigration aspect to this. So I don't think we're going to see anything in DC go forward until immigration at the border is almost taken care of. But honestly, they're two separate issues. But back to your point of trying to come in, I mean, I BS for a living. I really wish I couldn't, but I can't work. My dad nor my father-in-law can provide me a living wage, and then plus the cows I run. I can't. None of us can survive on 25,000 and a half of beef a year and trying to make a go of it. I mean, that's just the reality of it. So, yeah. So, but back to the H2A side. I mean, the potato guys, the sheep guys, they've been going for a long time advocating on this. And I think as we have more of that collaboration, I'm sure you've heard that, but I mean, Congress was pretty close, the House at least. The Senate would have tweaked it a little bit, but they did make some really good progress, but then COVID totally stopped that. So that's from my working with the potato guys.
I want to say we were in Glasgow. We had there was a gentleman that sat on the board of U.S. Custom Harvesters and shared that at that time it was just coming out. The U.S. House of Representatives had a task force relative to this and came out with some recommendations. Some of those recommendations were so each state has a minimum wage for an H2A worker. So Montana's $16.80, something in that nature. I don't do the payroll, and neither does Joe, so not sure either. But then that has an appreciation of inflation over time, where it's just no matter what, it is going to get higher over time. So that formula is being reevaluated, and then the other is 12 months out of the year instead of 10 months out of the year. And that was just two of the recommendations. There was a very long list. We have a copy of it if anybody would be interested in looking at it as well. But we are very much in a political climate. Just even, was it 2 weeks ago, the Department of Labor just enforced a whole bunch more restrictions on the H2A program. And so, that goes back to why we're all here is, we need to have a voice and say, look, it is not a matter of, I don't want to pay any people more. And that's why I'm wanting to work with these immigrants. It's like, I'm not going to continue my business if I don't have this help. And we're hearing that more all the time because you just can't find it. Any other thoughts or feedback there?
On that 12-month extension, is that going to require them to return, or can they stay? Sorry, Mike. So on the requested 10 months to 12 months, is that going to require a return to their home country, or they just stay on indefinitely?
Well, as the law reads right now, they can only be in the United States, any visa worker for no more than 3 years.
Okay.
So what happens now, and I'm sure everyone knows this, but just to share, so let's just say a worker comes here for 10 months and we can't hire them anymore. Especially the South Africans, they do not want to go back to South Africa. So they're going to go to try to work for someone else in between petitions, and they call those rollovers. But if they do that, they cannot be in the United States more than 3 years. And we've heard everything on this immigration. From here, we're trying to follow all the rules and everything, and we've heard it's way easier for me to go to Texas and pick up an immigrant there and come back versus going through this process. Because the other thing is if you don't, as it also came up, if you don't dot the I's or cross the T's and something's not right, they will shut you down. and your 11 workers have to leave now. And that is a problem. Anyone else?
Let's open it up to any other topics.
Yeah, and we'll, we kind of touched on many different topics here, or Joe, did you have something on that?
Say one thing, I would hope for those people that are running for office, and though if there's anybody listening that is in office, I would hope you would consider these auction markets around America do not qualify for H-2A labor. For some reason, they don't say we qualify for ag labor, which just blows my mind. Packing houses, processors do not qualify. So if not so much here within the state of Montana, but there's a lot of areas where there's auction markets that they're on the verge of closing because they can't find help. And the only help they can get, but they got to go to H-2B labor, which is a lot different ballgame. And I would just hope that in this conversation that we would sure consider trying to get these auction markets to where they can qualify for H-2A labor, because it's going to be the matter of closing the doors or not to a lot of these folks.
And is that simply because of the restriction on them working on production agriculture, the production side of it? Is that the limitation?
I can't answer it, but I know we got South Africans at home. We got some Mexicans at the white sulfur unit, but we've tried bringing them in. We said, well, can we bring them in on a big sale? By God, we could use some help. And big time against the law.
That's how I would interpret it, is that the H-2A is for production agriculture. So you have to be growing, producing. Yep. Okay, so just, we've covered a lot of topics. We've covered everything here on the list. I mean, just probably one last thing relative to mentorship. This has been really a continually growing topic on all of these listening sessions. And, it is a real tool for us to get this next generation. And then we've hit on it many different times just throughout the evening already. But the one thing I wanted to make sure that just to get everybody thinking about is, and you need to encourage your neighbors, you need to just encourage our industry, but it is really much the topic of taking care of our own. And I mean, we talk about all of these different tools, but just even as we talked about it, it still comes down to someone giving someone a hand up, and at least a start. And it is so important. And do we really need to sell it to the highest bidder? Do we really need to lease it to the highest bidder? After the Dillon session, a younger producer came up to us and said, hey, I didn't say anything, about the access to land, anything, because the people I'm bidding against were in the room. And so, I mean, that is just the reality of it. But they were asking, so what do I do? I mean, I'm trying, but I can't, I get outbid, where it doesn't make any sense, or, the bigger operation can maybe absorb the higher costs. So it's just to really encourage that thought process and help be a leader of it. Now, we heard from at Three Forks, where there was a veterinarian shared, where there was a portal, if you will, or website, to where they were trying to connect veterinarians trying to retire and get out of the business and sell their clinic with new veterinarians coming out of school, obviously wanting to get in the business. And so maybe as an industry, and it's already been suggested, maybe we need to do a better job at that. And also from mentorship, which goes back to even our tax discussions. Hey, if I want to sell this at production value, then don't kill me on a tax policy. It all kind of gets wrapped together here. And so those are all good things to think about. And so if anyone has any recommendations on that or wants to share a story a success story, because I promise you this, everyone is listening, and your story could make another story. And that is what's been really the power of this, these listening sessions, because it is very much, we're just teaching ourselves amongst ourselves, virtually as a ranching family. And so I just wanted to encourage anybody, just right now, we'll take some minutes there and then we'll open it up. But does anybody have any stories or any recommendations or success stories just to share, to say, oh, you know what, I didn't even know someone would do that?
Blake Hopman from Helena, but my family ranches over kind of the Drummond area. One thing when you're talking about the mentorship stuff that I thought about, I mean, just kind of a neat story with my dad. We're basically totally dependent on leases, but, you know, think about trying to identify some of the people. I mean, you know, they bought land, have no idea, you know, never done anything with agriculture, but we kind of lucked out into this deal working with these folks. You know, they're retired, but we got the opportunity to lease their place, and they just want to be, you know, involved. They help us brand, you know, those, you know, all that kind of stuff, and it's just a good deal, I think, for young people. You know, as, you know, more land is bought up by some of those folks, and not all of them are going to be open to that, but, you know, how can we identify some of those folks that do want to provide opportunities to, you know, young people or just, you know, other people in the community. They want to be a part of the community, so I would say that would be something to think about.
We haven't talked a lot about absentee landowners, and they are in the state. We've worked with some guys north of Lewistown a little bit that took cattle completely off their hunting ranches, and they couldn't figure out why the elk went away. Well, put a few more yearlings on there, and that really helped freshen up the grass. I think that's important too. How can we work with these out-of-state landowners, have some resources for them to understand the importance of livestock grazing and taking care of it? But I might hand the microphone over to Joe again. Bill Rischel and Trey Wasserberger, that's such a cool story. Our friend Bill Rischel in the Angus industry, Nebraska rancher. His kids didn't want to come back to the ranch, and a young kid out of Wyoming worked with Bill. And I think that's an issue we see a lot of is, you know, the kids haven't come back to the ranch. Well, the kids are 50, 60 years old, and they don't have a connection to it anymore other than coming back for branding or Christmas, and they sell it to the highest bidder. But Joe, do you want to talk about Bill and Trey and just that, how that transition is, it's keeping an Angus breed, or, you know, good Angus line going, but also it's keeping that land in the sandhills in production ag too. It's one of the best stories I think I've heard of transitional from not being in a family, but bringing a guy in that wants to make a go of it.
Yeah, no, it's what I think of, and that was kind of the point I was trying to make when that's what I think of as a mentor is, I mean, this particular outfit he had 3 girls, and they were very successful, and they're still very successful in other endeavors, and had really no interest in taking the ranching on, and their husbands didn't either. And young man and his wife come along, and he married a gal from that area and kind of worked into the deal, and Bill made a long-term commitment with him, financed him through the whole thing, and now he's kind of taken the thing over and gone. And to me, if we could come up with some kind of an incentive, because I don't know about the rest of you, but our best employees, the people we get the best bang out of our buck for, are the people we give some incentives to. Myself included. I mean, all of us operate quite a little better if we got a little incentive. And why not incentivize some of these people that would love to leave their land to somebody that would leave it in food production, but have nobody to leave it to? But maybe there's a neighbor kid, or maybe there's, just like this story, I mean, they're out there. But right now, we have no incentives for those people to even look at it. It's a lot easier just, well, we're done. We're going to take the recreational value to this place, and we're going to live happily ever after. I mean, my mother's 93 years old. She's got 56 grandkids, great-grandkids, and great-great-grandkids. And my brothers and sisters and our spouses and her, we could sell all of this tomorrow and we could live happily ever after. But then what the heck do you do with all these kids? And somehow somebody has got to mentor these people, these kids, to do this. But we've got to incentivize these people into doing that. And there's ways of doing it, tax-wise especially. And though that's true mentorship. That's taking care of our own.
In my own case, dealing with my parents, my dad was pretty old. He had me at a later age. He had me when I was 41. So anyway, the way I got started is I cash leased the whole place from him, cattle and all. So I could keep heifers. He could sell those cows as they got older for his income. So that's one way to kind of think about this. And by the way, I'm Ken Morris. I'm from MSGA, Montana Cattlemen's Association. I never did mention that. I've hogged the mic here quite a bit. But that's one good way to do that. Cash lease it, and they can make it through the summer and then pay you in the fall. And you'll gain the cattle herd as they're selling the older cows.
Excellent, thank you. Anybody else, any other thoughts? Or well, we'll kind of wrap it up from there. If if you're going home or working later and you have some aha moments, please reach out and share it, because it's really important. And we have the forum online at mtbeef.org. And it's just so important to share your ideas and your stories, because, really our obligation to our membership and our industry is to share the stories and to share the ideas, and move forward the policies that our membership voted on and really try to get some things done. And here we are really trying to help our industry unite. And so, thank you. I didn't know you were from Montana Cattlemen's, so thank you for being here, and Cindy and grain growers for being here. I mean, it's a big deal, for us all to really start working together. So I'm going to turn it over to Ray Lee. She's going to make you get your phones out again. And then also we're going to have our drawing here pretty soon. So if you have not signed up for the cooler, make sure you get together with Ian here. So I'll just turn it over to Lee.
All right, thank you. So yeah, grab your phones. We have 3 questions for you. You can pull up the same page as you were on before. If it's not loading for you, just hit your refresh button and then it should pop back up. But we talked about 5 key areas tonight: taxes, government programs, labor, barriers for entry, and mentorship. We'd really like you to rate those or rank them 1 through 5 on what you think should be the most priority. Because as Turk mentioned, we've had 13, or we will have 13 listening sessions, a lot of great comments, a lot of great ideas. At some point, we'll have to whittle that down and start prioritizing things. So we want to hear from you on what you think the number 1 should be through number 5. Looks like minimizing barriers to entry is currently 1, followed by tax climate and government programs.
I can't read it either. Yeah.
Yeah, number 1 is minimizing barriers to entry, followed by tax climate, government programs, industry, mentorship, and then labor. All right, moving on. What topics from tonight's discussion did you find the most valuable? All right, and our last question for this evening, and is Ian back in here? If you haven't signed up for a vaccine cooler drawing, raise your hand and we'll get you a form before we wrap up. Last question, how can MSGA or the Producer Profitability Initiative serve you and your family's operation? Would you, in the little guy in the Sonic sweatshirt, want to come down and draw the name of the winner? Come on down. We'll wait for Ian. What's your name?
Tyson.
Okay, you got a big job. Okay. Is Ian coming? Ian's coming. All right, well, while we wait for Ian, thank you all for attending tonight. We have lots of opportunities for you to follow up, as Turk said, and we definitely want to hear from you. We'll be rolling out some information after our mid-year meeting as well, so be on the lookout for that. You'll get a follow-up email. Anybody needing to enter before we? All right. You guys will all be mad if his name's drawn while you wait on him. We're almost ready.
Can't draw your own name. You can draw your dad's name, though.
All right, I'll slide over here. Let's go right over here. Ian's going to put that in there. Can you stir it up? And then just pick one ticket. Jean Curry. Oh, good job. Congrats, Jean. High five. Good job. Thank you. All right, Jean, don't leave without your vaccine cooler tonight. And thanks for your help.
Okay, just some final thoughts for the evening. Again, just on behalf of the Montana Stockgrowers Association, our president John and Vice President Leslie and myself and our whole team, we passionately thank you for your feedback, your attendance, and your involvement, because it is your story that's going to really make a difference in American policy. And we are doing our best to make sure that voice is carried and heard very loud. And as we've gone across the state and we've talked about this, one I want to say it was at Pays, we had a great question afterwards. The question was, well, now what? Well, the now what is already happening. And this is really just the beginning. And so once we're concluded here in a week there in Ronan, there's going to be nearly 1,000 producers that have been involved in what you have been doing, either sitting in these seats or online. And so we've already been in DC here 3 weeks ago, already sharing this story. And when they start to hear what has happened from a real grassroots effort, I promise you people are listening to us. Because this just doesn't happen. And it hasn't happened in a long time. And it definitely hasn't happened like this, to where we have structured feedback. This has all been recorded. It's very public. We can go and look at the comments. We have online responses. And your voices matter, and we're going to make sure they matter. And so we want to encourage everyone to come to mid-year. This is where a lot of the feedback from all these sessions is going to be reported. We're also going to be reporting this to our board of directors, and then there's going to be an action plan. And that action plan is already happening. And the one thing is we can already tell there are some major topics that we want to make sure get across the finish line that really goes back to our resolutions that were passed last December that came from Montana Stock Growers members that put it through that. And so you definitely need to stay involved. If you have an idea or anything, please pass it along. And if you know anyone else that wants to be involved in this, we have one more session in Ronan. Please encourage them to go and or just listen online. There's really a lot of neat things happening, as we've already alluded to it, across the U.S., where there's other states looking to see what we've done here in Montana. There's going to be a series start in June in Alabama that's modeling exactly off of what you just experienced, that they're going to do across their state. And so please, I just can't thank you enough for being part of the change and part of the voice, because it's very important and it matters. And so with that said, thank you. And if there's anything we can do for you or we're not doing for you, we need to hear from you. So thank you. Joe?
I was going to say, I think the Montana stock growers, I think, what have you had, 13 of these already? Got one more to go, but I think Rayleigh's made every single one of them. I think Ian's made every single one of them. I think this young lady right here has made just about every single one of them. Monty and the rest of the crew, I know John's made quite a few of them as well, and I know Leslie's made a bunch of them, and it's been a huge, huge commitment for these people. I mean, they're getting paid nothing for this. And they believe in this idea of unity, this idea of coming together. And I think if you're not, all of you folks, I'm sure a lot of you aren't proactive or active in an industry group, but I would encourage you to do so, whether it be the Montana Stock Growers, whether it be the Montana Cattlemen, whether it be Farm Bureau, Farmers Union, RCAF. I don't care which one it is, but get active, because nobody's going to help us unless we help ourselves. And living proof, we got awful good folks here in the state of Montana that care, that want to make their places generational. And I think we need to give these folks, let's give Lynn and Ryan Perry and all the folks here at Western a big hand as well for hosting this thing. And it's been so much appreciated. But again, we appreciate all of what you folks have done for this industry.
Well, thanks again. Hopefully everybody got a lot of moisture in the last couple of days. Yep, we still have some beverages and goodies in the back here. Just one quick plug. We've done a lot of these, and that was absolutely the best reception food we have had on this whole day. That was great. Thank you very much.